كاليفورنيا أكلها وصوتها شكلها وكونها أكتر من لون ضحية صحراء ونخل بحر ورمل جبال وتلال وأمل خبز وحشيش وقمر.
Our program today will begin with a brief overview of Fowler's new initiative generously funded by Lilly Endowment Incorporated by Fowler's Director of Education and Interpretation, Amy Landau. A brief presentation on the history of Islamic communities in LA by Asma Sayeed will follow. Then Harold D. Morales will moderate a panel discussion featuring 3 local community leaders, Marta Felicitas Galedary, Edina Lekovic, and Imam Jihad Saafir. This panel will reveal the histories of Black and Latino Muslims in Los Angeles, their interactions with Muslims of other backgrounds in the city, and highlight the leadership of Muslim women within these groups. Before we get going, I've got 2 quick technical bits of housekeeping. Once the screen sharing begins, I encourage you to click View Options and then select Side-by-Side mode, so the video feed doesn't cover any of the presentation. And if you have any questions during this program, please submit them through the Q&A function found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can submit and upvote questions that you would like to be considered to be answered at the end of the program. All right, that's all from me. Over to you, Amy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Amy Landau at the Fowler. Today's program is part of the Fowler Initiative, Engaging Lived Religion in the 21st Century Museum. This initiative offers opportunities through programs, exhibitions, as well as digital collaborations to share different viewpoints and learn from Los Angeles faith-based communities. Through these programs, we hear different perspectives and gain a better understanding of the histories of LA neighborhoods. Conversations like today's also enable us to explore ways the museum might collaborate with religious and civic leaders like Marta, Edina, and Imam Jihad in the future. On behalf of the museum, I wish to thank our panelists for sharing their time and their expertise today. I also wish to express gratitude to the Islamic Studies program and its director, Asma Sayeed, who co-organized this panel, and also to express my gratitude to my longtime Baltimore colleague, Harold Morales, who is moderating today's panel. I've enjoyed a history with Harold shaping programs that bridge campus museums and religious life in Baltimore, and I look forward to working with all the panelists and the moderator in the future. So thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Asma.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. It's really wonderful to see you all, or to have you all here with us. So my task today is a fairly straightforward one, although it's a bit challenging too. It's to present a quick overview of the history of Muslims in Los Angeles. So I do have a PowerPoint and I'm going to try to share screen and do it successfully, I hope. Okay, hopefully, Bianca, you can see that okay, or everyone can see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, thank you. So again, I'm just going to present this very, very brief history, about 7 minutes. And I like to think of Los Angeles as a mosaic of world Islam. And I chose those words carefully. I didn't say a mosaic of the Muslim world because it really is world Islam. There are representations or communities from all over the world, from majority Muslim areas, as well as areas that have minority Muslim populations and indigenous, or I should say, Black American Muslims, as well as white American Muslims, European Muslims, and they're all represented here in Los Angeles. So just in terms of demographics, California is actually number 9 in terms of the states in the U.S. with the largest Muslim populations. As you can see, Illinois, Virginia, and New York are ahead of California, but that in absolute terms, I believe that there are California is somewhere like 2nd or 3rd in terms of the numbers of Muslims. There are estimated 500,000 Muslims just in Los Angeles, And accurate population statistics are tough to come by. So these are all estimates based on, sort of internet searches, and as some of you may have seen other figures. California is also the US state that ranks second in terms of the number of mosques. And so, there's a substantive representation of Muslims here in California, and particularly in Los Angeles. And given this mosaic, right, given the diversity of Muslims and that the history is very much still being written, all I want to do today is just bring up a few major historical markers. Now, if you were going to read the history of Muslims in California and Los Angeles, by most accounts, it begins somewhere in the 1960s, and I'm presenting a slightly different history here to call attention to a longer past. In the early 20th century, actually, there was a migration of substantial numbers of Punjabis from South Asia to the Central Valley. Many of them were agricultural workers, and they settled and did some institution building in that area. In 1947, just north of us, you had the establishment of the first mosque west of the Mississippi, in Sacramento, and that's actually the first mosque in California. And then in the 1950s, there was the establishment of Temple Number 27, a Nation of Islam mosque in Los Angeles. And although some Muslims consider Nation of Islam to be heterodox, I've included it here in the timeline because it is an incredibly important part of the history of Islam in America. And the Nation of Islam also initiated a number of very important sort of social service outreach initiatives, such as the Sister Clara Muhammad schools. In 1974, they established the first prison ministry program for Muslims. In 1975, there was a transition of many Black Muslim Americans to Sunni Islam under the leadership of Warithdin Muhammad. And as a result, there were a number of other Black Muslim, predominantly Black Muslim mosques, such as Masjid Bilal, Masjid Ibadullah, which is now Masjid Islah, and we'll hear more about that from Imam Jihad Saafir. Alongside this growth of the Nation of Islam and the developments there, we have a migration of Middle Eastern, South Asian Muslims, again, in substantial numbers, and its attendant institution building. There are so many mosques associated with these immigrant communities. The earliest one is the one established in Los Angeles, the Islamic Center of Southern California in 1966, and then a decade after that, the Islamic Center of Orange County. I just want to highlight here that mosque building was accompanied by other institution buildings, such as MPAC, which was established in 1988 to improve understanding of American Muslims, to impact policy making through partnerships with media, grassroots communities, and political circles here in the US. And again, alongside all of this, there's even more diversity in the 1980s, in particular with the growth of Shi'i institutions as a result of the Iranian Revolution. Many Shi'is migrated, many Iranians migrated to the United States, and just in LA alone, there are at least 3 major Shi'i mosques or centers. Most people think of Shi'i Islam as an Iranian phenomenon, and I wanted to point out here that that's just not true. There have been numbers of Black Muslims who've also converted to Shi'i Islam. And for me, as somebody who studies American Islam, the example of Masjid Rasul in Watts is a really fascinating one because it is a predominantly Black Muslim Shi'i mosque that's been engaged in all sorts of really interesting intercity reform work, but unfortunately don't have time to get into that here. And lastly, in 1999, we have the establishment of the Latino Muslim Association, and Khadijah Galedary will speak about that a bit more. The only thing I want to say about that here is that I've put it as a major historical marker because Islam is growing rapidly among Latino Americans. And so we will, I expect we will hear more and more from associations like the Latino Muslim Association when we speak about American Islam. All of these organizations have contributed in different ways to the landscape of American religious life. There are interfaith organizations. There are organizations like the Hollywood Bureau of MPAC, which help to positively impact representations of Muslims and Arabs in film and media. There are all kinds of civic service organizations, and we'll hear more about that in the panels or from the panelists today. The last kind of point that I want to make about American Muslim engagement, and in particular in light of the fact that this is co-sponsored by the Fowler Museum and the Islamic Studies program at UCLA, is that there have been fascinating partnerships in the areas of arts, culture, and academic institutions. So for example, there was this Los Angeles Islam Arts Initiative back in 2014 to showcase art and cultural production among global Muslim populations. And then here's where USC is a bit ahead of UCLA in the game, as it were. They've established a center for the American Muslim Civic Leadership Institute, which is a partnership between USC and American Muslims to address issues like the protection of civil liberties, fair housing, healthcare, immigration reform, and they're really impressive pioneers in this area. So just by way of conclusion, I want to say that given the reach and the impact of Muslim communities in California, there's some fascinating scholarship in this area. Here are just 3 books that have come out in the past few decades on focusing on different Muslim communities in Los Angeles. And I encourage those of you who are interested to explore them further. And then there are histories to be uncovered, right? The histories of Muslim slaves who accompanied Spanish explorers, Muslim slaves in California, although California entered the US as a quote unquote free state, there were likely African Muslim slaves in California as well. And then the history of Muslim material culture in California and Los Angeles. And that's something that I hope the Fowler and the Islamic Studies program can help to uncover. So that's it for my brief intro, and I just want to spend a few minutes now introducing our wonderful panelists, and they are very modest themselves, but I would just want to make the point here that they are all pioneers in their own right and really important community leaders here in Los Angeles and beyond. So let me start with Imam Jihad Saafir, who has a bachelor's degree in Arabic studies, a master's in Islamic leadership, and a PhD in practical theology from Claremont School of Theology. He's the founder of Islah LA, a community restoration initiative rooted in the Islamic principles of social justice. Islah LA promotes the betterment of community, education, social and economic empowerment in South LA. Our second panelist will be Marta Khadija Galedary. She was born in Mexico and she immigrated to the USA in 1983 and became a US citizen in 1988. I will stop sharing. I just got the chat. My apologies for that. So I was introducing Marta Khadija Galedary, and I just need to adjust my screen a little bit because I stopped sharing. Excuse me while I do that. Marta is the founder of the Latino Muslim American Association, which is based in Los Angeles and also goes by its acronym of LALMA. She was a U.S. representative sponsored by the State Department at the first Latin American Muslim Conference in Spain in 2003. In 2014, she established a partnership with LA Voice, leading to a new approach to outreach in non-Muslim communities through civic engagement. She currently coordinates Latino Muslim activities with diverse multi-ethnic non-Muslim communities. Edina Lekovic is the executive director of the Robert Ellis Simon Foundation, which supports innovative mental health projects addressing the needs of vulnerable populations in LA County. As a leading voice on American Muslims and intercommunity builder among diverse faith traditions, she has been featured on CNN, on BuzzFeed, NPR, and many other media outlets. She's a co-founder and board member of New Ground, which is a Muslim-Jewish partnership for change, and a lay leader at the Islamic Center of Southern California. She also hosts the podcast Meeting the Moment, which I love and I've benefited from personally, which explores how people find opportunities within life's big challenges. And it was named one of the best new podcasts of 2018. And lastly, we're really fortunate to have Harold Morales join us from the East Coast. He is the executive director of the Center for the Study of Religion and the City at Morgan State University. His research is inspired by his roots in Central American religiosity and focuses on the intersections between race and religion and between lived and mediated experiences. He uses these critical lenses to engage Latinx religions in general and Latino Muslim groups in particular. He has written a wonderful book on Latino Muslims, specifically on Lauma, which I use in my own teaching, and I'm very, very grateful for that. He's currently focusing on developing public scholarship initiatives through his research on mural art and social justice issues in the city of Baltimore, and through the CSRC, which is supported by a Luz Foundation grant. So I welcome all of you and thank you all for taking part in this panel.
Thank you, Asma. That was wonderful. So I have a few questions for our participants. And I wonder, Jihad, if we could start with you. If you could just describe your community, some of its history, the neighborhood that it's in, and some of the issues that you face.
Okay. First of all, I want to welcome everyone and just say that it's a pleasure being before you all, especially to discuss the history of my community, which I'm very proud of being a part of my community. And I want to begin with the story. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I believe I was maybe 12 or 13 years old. So I was at a phone booth, I think I'm revealing some of my age. So I was at a phone booth, and this was in South Los Angeles, right next to the mosque, Masjid Ibadullah, the masjid that was founded in 1986 by my father and other members of the community. So I'm at the phone booth. I don't know the exact details why I'm there or, so on and so forth, but it's right next to the mosque. And two gentlemen approached me and they asked me, where are you from? And this doesn't mean your place of origin. This is terminology utilized in the inner city saying, what gang do you represent? And I remember a few seconds later, the police were at the corner, and the two gentlemen, they noticed the police, and they said, they kept walking, so I was very grateful for the police on that day, at least on that day, I was very grateful. Now, I told my mother about this, and she said, next time they ask you this, tell them that you're Muslim. And I said, nah, that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work. But I'm 12 years old, what do I know? But she said, tell them that you're Muslim, and she said it emphatically. So maybe a week later, I was at a store right next door to the mosque. We will go to the store during a break from our Islamic studies classes at the mosque. And again, these two gentlemen walked in and they asked me the same question. And I did what my mother said to do. And I said, I'm Muslim, I'm Muslim. And at that moment, I realized, the clout that the Muslims had in the neighborhood. And I realized that there were those who came before me that really paved the way for me to be Muslim in those parts, in in the inner city, that the Muslims had, a reputation of really serving people. They had, a grand amount of respect in those communities. So I look at my position in being able to serve as an imam in the inner city as, I don't exist in a vacuum. There were people who came before. In particular, you have, what we would term as religio-racial identities. This is, being Muslim, and at the same time, because we are, because how prominent a racial identity is, you take with you into all institutions your racial identity. So my fathers and uncles and aunties, they were they were Muslim, but they were able to reconcile their Islam with their racial identity. So we would also term them as, Black Muslims. It's important, these individuals who came before from the Moore Science Temple of America. You have, even some of the propagation of religion from the Ahmadiyya movement. My parents came through the Nation of Islam. My father came into the Nation of Islam in early 70s, 1970. And I have a letter in which he wrote his parents. He told his parents, I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. I found purpose. So this really is a sign that these young people were looking for purpose during that particular time. The Nation of Islam, was huge. My father was a leader on the fish crew. They had a contract with Peru. Imagine they're going to the docks out at Long Beach, and they're bringing in their own product. We have a huge conversation nowadays around ownership, especially in the Black American community. Now, the Nation of Islam, they created their own independent economy. You're talking about, they had their own banks, right? Elijah Muhammad had his own jet with his grandson being the pilot. Who has heard of this? I don't know any imam in the country who has their own jet. You're talking about acres of farmland, the Muhammad Speaks newspaper, wholesale businesses. And, they had their own independent economy. Now, when we think about Los Angeles in particular, Los Angeles was huge. Temple number 27. We cannot forget about Temple number 27. Temple number 27, they can boast about 50 businesses, right? Gas stations, barbershops, cleaners, supermarkets, bakeries. They had good food restaurants. Like as I said, my father, they sold so much fish in Los Angeles that they caused the local supermarkets to change their prices, right? 1 million pounds of fish sold, right? 1 million copies of them. They had their own newspaper, right? And, I want to highlight a few individuals. First of all, my father, Imam Sadiq Safir, never forget this name. My father definitely, I'm very privileged to grow up in the household of a leader who continuously, he has opened doors and continues to open doors for myself. So never forget Imam Sadiq Safir. When you think about Islam in Los Angeles, in America, Imam Sadiq Safir, also Imam Ali Rashid. Imam Ali Rashid was a local leader. I never met him, but I've heard so many narratives about him that I feel connected to him. And then also you have another living legend, Imam Ali Rashid. He passed away. May God have mercy on his soul. Another living legend is Naeem Shah Sr. We refer to him as Papa Shah. He's a living legend. Just until recently, he recently retired. He the head of our security at UCLA. So we have Imam Abdul Karim Hassan. He's still an imam, a living legend amongst us. He's at Bilal Islamic Center, which is still up to date, and it's on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Central. So we're products of this. We're products of Temple number 27, Masjid Bilal, Masjid Ibadullah. Masjid Ibadullah in 1986. This was before some of these bigger masajid opened, these huge Islamic centers. they relied on the storefront masjid. The storefront masjid was famous in the inner cities for upholding Islamic principles and raising Muslims, right? So imagine this, like I'm young and I met Mike Tyson at the masjid at Masjid Ibadullah. I met Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was my father's good friend. Imagine a young man, right? I'm 11, 12, 13, being able to ride around with Muhammad Ali. We have individuals like Daryl Sabad. He was on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. We went to on set Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. This was Islam going into the mainstream, right? I've seen comedians. I've met Tribe Called Quest, Mos Def, right there at this small storefront masjid, Masjid Ibadullah. And we were able to transition into a community center. Some of the people from my generation, what we found is that, hey, we outgrew the storefront mosque. We want to transition into a more robust type of operation. So today we have Islah LA, and Islah LA also has Islah Academy. We're on Crenshaw and Slauson. We never left our roots, which are in the South LA, in the inner city, serving the individuals in the inner city. We have a school, full-time school, K through 8th. We're teaching Islamic studies, but we also teach social justice and many other things. It's a culturally relevant pedagogy designed for specifically African Americans who are Muslims. And we have a food pantry full time. We continue serving over 150 families per week. We also have 4 transitional houses, 2 for men and 2 for women, for those who are formerly incarcerated and also those struggling with homelessness. And we're going to build a mosque from the ground up, which we started. We tore down one building and we're working on another building right now. And we're a service-based organization. We don't just look at just having a mosque in regards to just a place to pray. We want faith to travel outside of the walls of the building. So what we emphasize with our membership is that, hey, we're not just about learning the Arabic language, learning how to recite Quran, but we're learning how to apply Quran in our lives and serve the surrounding community. So I did no justice to that history. There's so much more. I gave a few names, but the men and women who came before me, I'm in debt to them. They are what we refer to as the Sabiqun, which is valued. Those are the forerunners, the people who left this initial legacy that we continue to build from on today. And we ask that God have mercy on those who came before us, who gave us this, who we've inherited this work from. I mean.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Jihad, for sharing all of that. I was struck by a lot of the things you said, but I'm very from Los Angeles, very familiar with the Port of Long Beach. My wife Veronica's family lives there, and so we travel there every summer. And just to see all of those rows of cranes and the ships that come by, and I have all these images of Los Angeles, right, and of the Port of Long Beach. I think of the commerce a lot, but I think something that oftentimes gets overlooked is all of the spirituality and religiosity and social justice that's happening within these spaces outside of the mosques, right? Outside of the traditional spaces of religiosity. So I wonder if you could also describe a little bit about some of the social justice movements that you all are engaged in. And in particular, thinking about like, what is the relationship between the community and moving outside of those walls of the community, kind of like what you were describing in terms of the services that you provide as well?
Having a religious space in the inner city, you cannot ignore many of these social justice issues. I recall growing up, watching my father involved in, what took place with Rodney King. And even the, non-guilty, the acquittal of, these officers. And it's very similar to what we've experienced, with George Floyd and so on and so forth, and what we continue to experience. Right there on a given Friday, you may have a brother or a sister who comes up to you and they say, hey, I just got out of prison, but I was wrongly convicted. Imam, help me. It's right there in front of you. You have, for example, in regards to our school, we have children who they come to school and they're very sad because of the injury of incarceration. One of their cousins, one of their brothers may have been incarcerated. And also you're dealing with the threat of gang violence that hovers above everyone's head in the inner city. And what we look at is that these young men and women, they're crying out for help. The masjid, the mosque has to be a safe haven for these young men and women. What we've done canvassing in regards to our brothers and sisters who are incarcerated, who are trying to get out, or who have recently been released, and their felony or their incarceration has been held over their head, where they can't progress in life. So political issues and certain measures that hold them back, we try to go after that. We do canvassing and we attack that head on. Also homelessness. We've been on for the last couple of years is the police violence. We're very much against these what we would call police non-unions, police non-associations, in which they do not hold the police officer accountable. A police officer can kill, can murder, and get fired, but eventually be reinstated by the union. So that needs to really be addressed. They seem untouchable, but no, we're going to keep fighting the issues that are happening. The qualified immunity that continues to plague and allows those who have been given authority, they're not held accountable. So these are the issues that we're attacking and that we can't ignore being a religious institution in the inner city.
Thank you so much for that. Marta, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your community. So Jihad was saying a little bit about the different places in which his communities are located in, and the specific aspects that they face, the issues that they face there. So I wonder if you could say a little bit about the Latino Muslim community in Los Angeles, its history, the neighborhoods in which you've participated in some of your work, and some of the issues that you all face.
Yes, thank you. And welcome everyone. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to let you know what we do and what a Latino Muslim is doing for 20 years now. So before I get into that, let me tell you briefly, as much as I can briefly, my background. First of all, I am a Mexican immigrant and a US citizen. I embraced Islam in 1983. I was raised as Catholic. I follow all the precepts of Catholicism, the rituals, until my teenager years. Then I went to Mexico City and I earned my degree in humanities from a private Catholic school for women only. So I couldn't pursue an university level professional career. So I did have to work, and I earned a registered nurse title after 3 years of attending the the school in Mexico City. So at this point, I always had in myself the love for languages. So I continue studying English for 3 years, intensive classes every day after work. And after 3 years of being in advanced class, I decided to go to England because the school where I took my English classes it was administered by the British Embassy. And they organize every year, every summer, a summer course. So I decided to go and see the world, you know, from my little window in Mexico to see what was going on outside. So I went to Bath and stayed for the summer. Obviously, this English course is given to all over the world, countries where English is not spoken. So we have a multi-ethnicity and multicultural group in Bath. And I met students, they were from Brunei, 3 students that I met in Brunei, where nobody knew where Brunei is, coming from Latin America. So my classmate wanted the map. I pointed out, this is Brunei in Malaysia. So it was so interesting because the students never preach about Islam. First of all, I didn't know any word about Islam or a Muslim at that time. So but something very interesting about them, it was this beautiful, clear respect, clear mind and respect towards my persona as a woman. So it gave me a sense of security. So all our daily outside seeing the Bath or the surrounding areas, I will always go with them because I feel very safe with them. So the summer course ended so soon. So going back to Mexico City, I received a present of a book called Islam in Focus. So I started reading back in Mexico City, and I have multiple questions, but obviously nobody to ask over there. But I did memorize some words from the book, and I call it my magic words because after I repeat these words, my need or my questions were answered immediately. So these words were basically, I seek refuge in God from Shaitan, and I bear witness there's only one God. So again, without going into detail, but it worked for me at that moment. So advancing in my life, so I decided to take another summer tour, and this time to the United States of America. So here I was introduced to the Islamic Center Southern California by an English teacher. Her name is Valerie Diop Curtis, and she was a teacher where I started to continue studying English. And it was amazing. My first time in a mosque, I have a book and I just have a lot of questions. So I attended every Friday a class, Introduction to Islam, beautiful class on Fridays, and directed to non-Muslims and to the even Muslims that they were continuing learning Islam. And this class was given by Dawood Halil Ullah, beautiful brother. We're still friends, family friends. So I embraced Islam again before Christmas in 1983. So by the time I went to England in 2081, I got divorced from my first marriage, and I gave birth to one son. So when I came to this country, I was already divorced, and by the grace of God, I remarried in 2084. I remarried to Ali Galidari. And at this moment, I really want to acknowledge my husband. My husband has been the major support for my activism with LALMA. Without his support, there will be no LALMA. He has been my mentor, my editor, and of course, my lovely husband. Thank you. So today is our wedding anniversary, 37 years of marriage. So now let's jump to what happened in 1999. But before jumping to 1999, I'd like to acknowledge that our relationship with, before founding LALMA, our relationship with Civic Safir, which is the father of Jihad Saafir, he opened the door to the Latino Muslims in the way that he could give us support. And at that time, they were selling, they have a small store in Vermont, an exposition, and there were, it wasn't me, there was another couple of Latino Muslims starting giving classes in Spanish to whoever was interested in attending. With years after that first encounter with this couple of Muslims, it didn't work, and we decided not to continue with this couple of a brother and a sister who wanted to establish an organization. And we started again, we started in September 1999, and the Islamic Center in Southern California. So how do we start this? First of all, we did not want to start an organization. What we were doing is because there was a need to learn Islam in the Spanish language, and also to share our culture and provide support to the new Muslim, because there are many factors happening at the same time. You're a new Muslim, you have still family that are not Muslims. What are you gonna do? Are you a new Muslim and now you're supposed to dress in a certain way? Are you supposed to dress with a lower gown, like Arab gown? You're supposed to dress. So there was a lot of confusion. So therefore there was a need for a group to provide support among each other. So after every need, and this process of need, action, and maintenance, we follow through all our needs that were coming every time since the beginning of LALMA. So of course, in 1999, there was no imam who can speak Spanish. There were no scholar who can teach us in Spanish. So what we're gonna do? So that, yeah, we have to cover the need with resources, not only from the internet, because yes, we did encounter Muhammad Assad Quran in Spanish, and we encounter also the biography of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which both of these are so essential and basic to start learning and continue learning. And with time also, after 1999, maybe I think it was 2000, we started reaching out from the community. The students were already doing the PhD at the Islamic Studies Department from UCLA under Dr. Halab al-Fadl. So we met 3 students at the time, PhD candidates, so that's Jihad Turk, Hisham Mahmoud, and Munir Sheikh. So from their classes, we continue advancing in our knowledge. At the same time, when we move to the Omar Ibn al-Khattab Foundation, the scholar who started, Dr. Fatih Usman, who started at the Islamic Center, Southern California, he moved to be the scholar of Omar Ibn al-Khattab. It was a blessing. It was amazing that he will give time to the new Muslim to answer our questions that it could have been so trivial or insignificant according to us, but it was very important for us that he can tell us where was the truth. So he understood how important it is to give an information on Islam, which is a contemporary thinking of Islam, And what it means is that you're going to use your reasoning, you're going to use your intelligence, you're going to use and read the Quran in a historical context and not read it in the literal way. So this was extremely important, our relationship with him. And of course, we did continue with the Islamic Studies Department. And I'm so grateful, Dr. Asma Sayeed, who has been referring to us a new mentor after the candidate finishes their studies as a PhD. That mentor leaves LA and we start meeting with a new candidate in Islamic studies. So we have always been grateful to the academia, and we're used to the teaching of the academia level and our teachings of Islam.
Thank you. Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's a really unique way in which a lot of your religious mentors come from colleges and universities and other academic institutions throughout Los Angeles. I could see how that fabric is weaved in terms of these institutions in Los Angeles have shaped the way in which La Alma and other Latino Muslims learn about and engage, but also then how those students at those colleges and university campuses get introduced to the work of La Alma, so that a lot of members I know will go over to these campuses and give talks and things like that. So that I'm thinking along the lines of what Jihad was talking about earlier in terms of how the religion did not stay within the walls of a building and pushed outside of it. I'm actually in Baltimore City at the Plantation Park Heights urban farm, in which a lot of the religiosity, right, kind of just blossoms and grows outside of walls and into these garden spaces, these outdoor garden spaces. So I wonder, Marta, if you could tell us similarly a little bit about the work that La Alma does outside of the walls of traditional spaces, and in particular, the work that you all do with LA Boys.
Yes. Okay, so before the LA Boys, we did started a dialogue, interfaith dialogue with Catholics. And this happened after 2001, the 9/11, 2001 events. And we started the dialogue with the Catholics, Archdiocese of LA, because they requested somebody who can go and talk to them about Islam, because what they were hearing in the news, it was that the people who committed the crimes of killing innocent people, they were going to go to heaven and so forth. So that's our first time we started our interfaith. From that date till now, we still having this interfaith dialogue. Now for 13 years, La Alma dedicated to just interact with the Muslim immigrant community, and we attended all kind of events and classes, and that's it for 13 years. But then in 2014, it started our kind of evolving to opening our eyes and also the needs of the La Alma members. There were a lot of situations with immigration, same problems that the Latino community, non-Muslim, faces on housing, on employment, and so forth, especially immigration. We, as the Latino Muslim, were having the same problems. And who do we go to? It just happened that I met a community organizer in LA Boys, and LA Boys was referred to me by Brother Omar Hakim from Ibadallah, and he's still, right now, Omar Hakim is part of the board of directors of LA Boys. He's the one introduced me to community organizers. So in 2014, there was first of all, we had training how to do canvassing, how to do phone banking. And at that time, talking about the injustice happening with the African American community in jails, you know that also the Latinos in general are the ethnic group that also is in jail and having all these kind of injustices. So we learned how to do canvassing and support Proposition 47, which was exactly the first criminal reform where the petty crimes were turned into misdemeanors, and many inmates that were there for life for 3 petty crimes, they were reclassified and released even earlier. So it was awesome. We felt so good that yes, we can work together also with the non-Muslims because we have a lot of things in common. So from there, actually in 2015, we did a lot of satellite LALMA sites like in Orange County and Garden Grove and IIOC, the Islamic Institute, Orange County, and Fontana, trying to promote this support, know your rights, support your candidates, support the social justice because it's part of Islam. So it was a boom because we felt so good. And till now, right now is taking a pause for the new comings, new employees, new community organizers, LA Voice, but we are there. We are there supporting and promoting social justice and respect for human dignity, which is a mandate from God.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marta. Edina, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your communities and the communities that you work with as well, the history, the neighborhoods in which they're located, and some of the issues that you all face.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings. I am excited to be here again. My name is Edina Lekovic, and it's good to be with old friends and new friends, and to be reminded of so many ways that our stories intersect with each other and how the stories of our elders also intersect with each other. So I personally entered the story of Muslims in Los Angeles around 1995. My parents are 2 immigrants who came from what was then Yugoslavia and what is now Montenegro. Geographically, we're located on the backs, or let's say behind the heel, the Italy heel or the Italy boot on the map. And it's a tiny country of less than 1 million people. Islam came to our part of the world, to my ancestors, through the Ottoman Empire. And so my family's been Muslim for generations. And my parents immigrated to the US because they didn't have educational access. They made it to 5th grade and 7th grade. And they didn't have religious freedom because of the political system that they were raised in. So while they didn't know much about Islam because of the political repression, they had that faith spark. And so they after they got married, they moved to Austria. They lived there for 8 years. My sister and I were born there. And my parents felt that they were never going to be truly Austrian. And so they reinvented their lives for the second time with 2 babies in their arms. And that's how we became American. My parents were fortunate to be able to come here with papers through the immigration programs, and because we had some family here already. So I ended up in San Diego, and I grew up a culturally practicing Muslim. I was confused by how we could be European and Muslim, because most of my information about Islam and Muslims also came through television screens and film screens. And back in the 80s, that was mostly trash. So for me growing up, Islam felt like an accident of birth, and one that I couldn't fully own, and that I felt was more toxic than beneficial based on the limited information I had. And then in 1995, I moved to LA to go to UCLA. And so this is a full circle moment being here with the Fowler, because I moved to LA to go to UCLA, and it was my sister and I actually moved together. Yeah, not typical, but in my immigrant home, they sent us off to school together as a freshman and a transfer, feeling more safe with us in that way. And so our second day on campus, we happened to come across a student group table that said Muslim Student Association. And that was the beginning of it all. My sister was curious. I was skeptical. and it turns out that the guy behind the table was not just a Muslim student, but also the mascot at UCLA. He was Joe Bruin himself. And my sister ended up marrying that guy a couple of years later. It started our journey as curious seekers. And that journey for me, now that I reflect on it almost 25 years later, was rooted in the young people that I met. And so as we think about Muslim communities in Los Angeles, for me, while I was born Muslim, the reason I chose to be Muslim at 18, 19 years old was because of the Muslim students that I met at UCLA, who blew my mind and opened my heart and showed me that spirituality was big and was about connecting with people and connecting with God. So my journey at UCLA was really pivotal, and was my foundation in LA. It's where I learned all about the neighborhoods. I was also, I decided to start wearing hijab beginning of my second year in college. And I remember walking down Westwood Boulevard and on day one, and a little old lady walking towards me, and she recognized me, and I thought, where do I know her from? And she said, she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, honey, you're in America. You don't have to wear that here. And that was like classic 1996. I don't know, it's probably still classic 2021, sadly, but that was my introduction. But the reason I decided to start covering was because I didn't want to pass. I wanted to claim my Muslim identity. And that was part of, again, of being a reflection of the Muslims that I saw around me, who were mostly Los Angeles kids and Orange County kids, right? And who grew up in these mosques that I did not grow up in. I didn't grow up in a mosque or a community in San Diego, not well situated. And so it was after I graduated and realized that while I'd been the editor-in-chief of the Daily Bruin and the first hijab wearing, woman in the country to do that I couldn't get a job working in front of the camera. I wanted to be a broadcast journalist. And so I waited for a new path to open up, and that's what introduced me to the richness of the Los Angeles Muslim community. And I landed at New Horizon School in Pasadena, which is an Islamic school that's connected to the Islamic Center of Southern California. And by agreeing to teach there while I figured out what I was going to do, I opened up this whole chapter of my life that I'm beyond grateful for, because landing there, I became introduced to the Islamic Center of Southern California community. And so that's what I'll spend a little bit of time talking about now, because in reflecting on this is what complements what Imam Jihad shared, the foundation that was laid by his parents, his community, and so many others, was followed up and complemented by so many in the immigrant portion of the Muslim community. It's roughly 2/3 of the Muslim community. We know nationally, I don't know about in LA, but 2/3 nationally of the Muslim community are immigrant or foreign born, and 1/3 are domestic born or American born. And so the Islamic Center of Southern California is a mosque that was founded by immigrants in the late, I think, 1950s. And it started first as a meeting of mostly Middle Eastern immigrants in a house on St. Andrew's Place in Koreatown. And then in the 70s, I believe, they bought an old bank at 4th and Vermont that they turned into the Islamic Center of Southern California. And it was also in the late 70s that to a couple of pivotal figures, most of them Egyptian Americans, landed at the Islamic Center and became huge figures, not just for the Los Angeles Muslim community, but for the American Muslim community at large. And the two pivotal ones were two brothers named Dr. Hassan Hattout and Dr. Maher Hattout. May God shower their souls with blessings, because they were servants of the community, and they were both physicians who also had roots in Muslim activism in Egypt. And when they came to the US and they landed in LA after some time, the message they brought with them that fit into the Islamic Center was this message of an American Muslim identity, that we as Muslims in America, as Dr. Asma mentioned, I think she used the word Mosaic. The parallel that I use is that we're like the equivalent of Hajj. We are like an ongoing Hajj. So the once in a lifetime pilgrimage that brings Muslims from all over the world together to coexist and create spiritual life together for like a week. We do that all the time, and that's the reality of American Muslim life. But specifically, what the Islamic Center was trying to do was create this idea that that we can be equally Muslim and American, and those two things are complementary. They're not competitive, right? We don't have to choose. And for immigrant Muslims who were really fighting the identity battles and were really concerned about their children not carrying their culture forward, not carrying their language forward, not carrying their faith forward, that was like a hard concept for them to swallow, because what the Hattout brothers in the Islamic Center were asking, we're teaching, was we are Muslim. Period. We are not Sunni Muslim. We are not Shia Muslim. We are Muslim. We are not Pakistani Muslim, Egyptian Muslim, Montenegrin Muslim. We are Muslim. And the kind of Muslim we are American Muslims. That doesn't mean we wipe away all of the rest of it, but the thing that holds us together is that we are all American Muslims. We are living this unique experience together, and we have both rights and obligations in our city, in our neighborhood, and like in our country, right? And so that was the foundation of the Islamic Center community that I came into, and that has kept me going for the last couple of decades. The Islamic Center, again, in the times that I was not there, in the 80s, it was a hub. I look at it as like a startup incubator, because there were a ton of in the projects that became independent organizations. A couple of them that come to mind are the New Horizons school system that I mentioned, which started, I think, with a small campus at the Islamic Center site that still has an elementary school there. And then there's the Pasadena campus that my children now go to, full circle moment. And that was the first Islamic school in the country to get a blue ribbon designation from the Department of Education, and like I think this was back in the 90s, and really set the mold. I could be wrong, but I set the mold in that way. They also created the Islamic Information Service in the 80s, which was like a weekly television program about Islam that played on public access television all over the country, and introduced a lot of Muslims and non-Muslims to this way of understanding Islam. The Council of Islamic Education, which reviewed and improved like public school curriculum about Islam and Muslims. I believe that Niswa, which is a women's shelter, was also incubated at the Islamic Center. And if I'm wrong, they're also another independent institution that exists in LA to serve the community. And then the other one that my life intersected with in 2004 is the Muslim Public Affairs Council, which started as the Public Affairs Committee of the Islamic Center of Southern California, because they wanted to further this idea of an American Muslim identity, and also engage with public officials, especially to start to develop like a political identity for Muslims, so that we could advocate for the things that we cared about domestically and internationally. So that was started by a young 26-year-old Salam al-Mariyati and Dr. Maher Hattout, and in 86, and it became an independent group called the Muslim Public Affairs Council in 1988, which now has offices in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., and is one of the main players in American Muslim advocacy, and primarily focuses on public policy and on like image shaping, right? So public policy and public perception. I worked there for between 10 and 15 years, all things all things considered. And that was the time in which my twisted dream came true, which is that I served as a public spokesperson for American Muslims. I wanted to, as I said, I wanted to work in front of the camera telling other people's stories. And Allah gave that to me. God gave that to me by putting me in the hot seat many, many times for interviews that involved bad news related to Muslims in the post 9/11 era. So for a good part of that decade plus, if you saw me on TV, it was because I was responding to bad news and trying to tell our story as American Muslims in 3.5 minutes with as much humanity and dignity and heart as I could muster. So all of this came out of the Islamic Center. And this is an institution that, again, has a multicultural population, and it was and continues to be led by immigrant Muslims. And so to complement, like, as I hear Imam Jihad and Sister Marta Khadija tell their stories, the complement to this is that, there's a huge portion of the mosques in Los Angeles. And when I Googled, it seems like there's maybe 40 to 50 mosques of various sizes in LA County. The Masjid Ibadullah, Islah, all of the mosques that Imam Jihad mentioned were laid the foundation. And then there was like a few major mosques, that immigrant-led mosques or founded mosques, that added to the scene in the 80s and 90s, mostly domestically funded. And then there's like a slew of, mom and pop shop and all other kinds of mosques that have been created since then. And so LA is a really special place to me because what our parents and our grandparents created for each of their own communities with like their global understanding, our generations are now integrating and owning in ways that I hope that they are proud of and that serve serve the way that they taught us. And I'm grateful that we're all friends and that we're all in this work together, because alhamdulillah, I think that means all praise be to God. I think that that's the biggest progress that I have seen in the 25 years that I have been working in the LA Muslim community, is all of these pockets. There's still pockets in the Muslim community, but there's more integration than ever before. And before I stop, I want to just mention that like a couple of things that came out of Los Angeles that didn't that won't be talked about, or I guess that are important. So one is that Bernie Sanders had the first, actually Jesse Jackson had the first political rally at a mosque at the Islamic Center of Southern California back in, I think, 88. And then Bernie Sanders came to the Islamic Center for a campaign stop in this last election, two springs ago, I guess. And so I think that those are significant. And the other thing is that in 2015, another new institution popped up, which is the Women's Mosque of America, which some might argue could only have started here in Los Angeles with our spirit of forward thinking and traditionalism at the same time. So building on the tradition of women's only mosques that have existed throughout Islamic history, a woman named Hasna Masnavi started the Women's Mosque of America to provide a space for women to give sermons and pray together by and for ourselves. And my story intersects because I was the understudy to the woman who was supposed to give the first sermon, and then she wasn't able to travel, and so I was forced to step up and give the first sermon at the Women's Mosque of America, which is one of my proudest moments in retrospect. And that's also something that came here out of Los Angeles.
It's amazing, Edina. Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. I feel like there's such a rich history of Islam and of Muslim communities in Los Angeles, and that we're just like barely starting to like peel away at the surface of some of this. And thank all of you for all of this amazing information and for sharing your stories. I wondered if you could each, so first of all, if anybody in the audience has any questions, it would be great if you could just put it in the chat. and that the panelists could possibly respond in the chat within like the last few minutes that we have left. But also for the panelists, I wonder if you could just very briefly in 1 minute or so, tell us a little bit if you have some advice for artists, museum professionals, academics wanting to work with community partners in the city. I wondered what kind of advice you would give very briefly. And Jihad, I wonder if we could start with you again.
Yeah, most definitely. I think, one of the meanings of Islah is, as they mentioned in the Quran, that Islah baina nas. So this is reconciling relationships between people. So when we talk about building relationships, I'm going to take ownership of that. That's my area. But no, that's what it's about. It's about building relationships and not destroying relationships. So, try to be where the people are at. One of the things we learned from the Sunnah of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he mixed with the people. So, mix with the people. Be careful, of course, because we have COVID. So, take some of those things that we've learned with you into those spaces, and don't be shy about building relationships. And that was my purpose, even on accepting this invitation, is that I'm always down for building relationships with people, and that's our strength. That's my advice: is that build relationships. You're not going to really grow in seclusion. There's moments of seclusion that you're going to need in your life. But those moments usually happen after, reflecting on how you're going to build relationships with others. So use your moments of seclusion to help you be a better person when you are around people and groups. So build relationships.
Great advice. Thank you. Marta, I wonder if you could give us some words of wisdom to close off with as well. You're muted.
Yes, and basically my suggestion is based in 2014, LALMA participated in collaboration with the Civic project that you already mentioned, the LA for Islam Arts Initiative. We collaborating and booking a place in East Los Angeles, and the topic was from La Iberia to Los Angeles, Legacies of Islamic Spain. The presentation was given by Professor Munir Sheikh. Now, the topic of legacies of Islamic Spain in Los Angeles was so unique because our presenter put together pictures of buildings in Los Angeles that possessed or they're built under the Mudéjar architecture. And the Mudéjar architecture is not well known under that name because everybody is labeled as the Mediterranean architecture. So it was amazing to see the response from East LA area and to this presentation. And I also realized that the topic of the legacies of Islamic Spain, not only to Los Angeles, but in general, the legacy of Al-Andalus, the 800 years of Muslim presence in Liberia is not known, not only among Muslims, especially with non-Muslims. And on the Latino perspective, we have roots from that era of the Islamic Spain. So we have roots in the architecture and the Spanish language and some cultural aspects, food. So this unique legacy that is amazing to discover. We need to discover. I discovered in 2001, and immediately when I came back, I said, we have to promote this knowledge. So yes, we did organize small presentations to two libraries, one in Huntington Park, especially where the Spanish-speaking populations are elevated, like Huntington Park, mid-cities, and in Fontana. So we were to different Islamic Center presenting this legacy. And I think this is very important that, in my suggestion, that the Fowler Museum probably will present either an exposition or just lectures about the topic. I think it will be well received.
Gracias, Marta. Edina, I wonder if you have any words of wisdom, any advice for artists, museum professionals, or university professors that would like to partner up with community partners and collaborate?
Sure, and thanks for asking. I love it when public institutions ask for advice. So mine is to bring Muslim communities and culture into the museum. To my knowledge, there has yet to be a museum in Los Angeles that has featured an exhibit on the history of Muslims in Los Angeles, with the photos of the people and the places that we have shaped and that have shaped us, with artifacts from historic moments like what we have described and historic figures, so that we center and make mainstream the contributions of Muslim Angelenos for the last century. That seems only natural as cultural life institutions in Los Angeles. The closest we've had, to my knowledge, was the LACMA, which has its wonderful Islamic arts section. The word isn't coming to mind, but exhibition, and that's extraordinary. And I think it's all international. And so we need a domestic focus that centers our communities, and so that we're not just talking about the diversity that we encompass and that we have lived, but that is on display, and that I've spent a long time trying to demonstrate my credibility, my authority, my ownership of the truth. And we're lucky that we now have data and we have artists to contribute to this. I think it would be beautiful to see contemporary artists by Muslim Angelenos, like the music at the top that was LA Syrian based hip hop artist Omar Effendum, or Yuna, who's an Indonesian born and Los Angeles resident who was mentored by the hip hop artist Usher. We also like Rami Youssef of Rami fame on Hulu, Golden Globe winner, although the Golden Globes are now more discredited, but we have all these people locally who were cultural figures. And I think that LA museums and institutions could really showcase that uniqueness, because that's what makes us LA. We have the Muslim creatives from all over the world come here to also make it. And so anyway, I think that there's lots that can be done. And lastly, I want to say that when you feature Muslim artists in your exhibitions, that they not be forced to focus exclusively on their spiritual or ethnic background in their work in order to be featured. So often, I have a friend who's an Iraqi Muslim American artist who has a Sunni parent and a Shia parent. And so she represents all of this diversity that's especially sexy in this moment. And a lot of galleries and other places want pieces that focus on her identity rather than focusing on her creative expression. And so I think, again, that there's so much nuance and complexity that museums as cultural institutions can be leaders on. And here in Los Angeles, at my alma mater, I'm hoping for the best.
Yeah, awesome, amazing. Thank you so much to each of our panelists, and to everybody who is here with us. Bianca, I'll go ahead and pass it to you.
Yes, thank you. And Asma, yes, I would like to invite you to say a few words here before we close out.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all so much, Marta, Jihad, Edina especially, and I loved hearing from all of you. And I, in the spirit of what Jihad said, looking forward to the partnerships and extending them. I just want to say really quickly that the sources that I mentioned were posted, I believe, in the Q&A for those who wanted them. And You know, I thought that we would talk a little bit more about Harold Morales's book, Latino and Muslim America. I didn't include it on my slide because that would upset the balance of my slide, but it's an amazing book. I use it in my Islam in the West class all the time, and I encourage those of you who are interested to look at it. And thank you so much to Bianca and Amy for inviting us to co-present with you. I have to say that Fowler runs an incredible operation, and I absolutely loved partnering with you and look forward to more. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Asma, Harold, Jihad, Marta, and Edina for joining Amy and me today on this program, shining a light on this mosaic of Muslim life in our city. I love that metaphor, and offering some gems of advice as well. And thank you to everyone who joined us. This program has been recorded. It will be available immediately on our Facebook and in the coming days on our Instagram and on the Fowler website for you guys to share as you see fit. And we hope you'll join us again next time for our next program. You can find information on the closing slide. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you joining us today. Bye.
Thank you.